Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be building with the new Cozy Bistro Kit, which has just come out this week. And I was very excited to start building with this one because it is really vintage and beautiful, and it has these posters that have these early 20th century images that I think are so beautiful. It's a style that I have loved for a very long time, and there's some very cute windows and doors and everything. And since I really do enjoy building cafes and that kind of thing in The Sims, I was even more excited about this one. So I really wanted to have this be two separate buildings, or two different buildings that will be in the same lot. So this is where you would normally find Pepper's Pub here in Britechester. And I really love the lot and the surroundings, but the actual build I think isn't great. I have actually already built a cafe in here, and it was in a similar style, and I will have that linked down for you in case you want to watch that as well. But I am still very happy with how this one came out. I really loved using these new windows and doors and these signs that I think are so cool, and I realized that this red swatch goes perfectly with some of the items from vampires. So this wood paneling and the trim that I have on top of the building, those are from vampires, and it matches perfectly with this swatch. So I really wanted to have this to be like very traditional, and I was doing some research, so I wanted it to look like it could be in London, which I think is one of the inspirations for this world, or definitely the UK. So I was looking at pubs and that kind of place. I really wanted to have these two look like they could be that kind of space, so that it would look well in the world and that it would work with these items. So I am using a bunch of vampires on this side, and on the other one I am using Discover University, which just made sense. And I didn't want this to only use the new kits in one building and not use it on the one that is next to it. So for example, these awnings are from the new kits, and at the moment I have some base game awnings on the bistro side, and I don't actually keep those. I end up changing those for some get-together ones, and I actually also used a lot of get-together in this slot, which is kind of predictable because of the European vibe that Get Together tends to have, and because a pack comes with cafes. So I actually made the bistro side into a cafe, and the other side is going to be a pub. That's actually going to be for another video. I am just making sure that I have the outside figured out, and the outside actually took me so long to build. Actually, this whole outside portion of the build took me almost an hour, and I think that sped up and everything, it is not even 5 minutes, which I thought is interesting to think about. While I was editing, I was just realizing just how many windows I tried out and how much I experimented with these stairs. It was completely ridiculous, but I ended up having them as these metal stairs so that it wouldn't take up as much space, and I was just thinking that they looked a bit ridiculous before, so I also paired them with this railing, which I think is from vampires as well. And then I just went and got this bike rack from, I think this one is from For Rent, and the 3 bikes on the left are actually fake debug bikes, and the 2 ones on the right are from Discover University and Growing Together, so those are actually functional. But I just wanted to make sure that some of the bikes would stay there even if Sims wanted to ride around in them or whatever. And now we're going to be finally starting to furnish this cafe, and I really want this to be a cafe because I wanted to use the bar on the other side, and to me it just didn't make sense to have 2 bars one next to the other if I could have some like extra functionality. And actually you could just class this as a cafe or as a bar and just hire the personnel for the one that isn't the official classification of the lot. So if I had this as a bar, which I was playtesting this as. I also hired a barista so that I could make sure that the barista would be able to have access to the coffee machine and everything. And speaking of coffee machines, the new coffee maker that comes with this kit is so cute and vintage, and I know that cafes don't need like a coffee maker, but this was so beautiful that I just needed to include it. I could have included it on the apartment upstairs, which I think this is the first time that I'm mentioning it. There's an apartment upstairs, and there is going to be one on the upstairs of the other building, but in this video I am going to be decorating the one that is on this side. And I could have had the coffee pot on that apartment, but I ended up not having enough space in there because it's a very tight apartment actually. I even thought about making this building a bit bigger just so that the apartment could have a bit more space, especially since I wanted it to be for like a collector of antiques or antiques dealer. So I really wanted to have that apartment have a lot of clutter and a lot of like old-fashioned furniture and all that kind of thing. There's actually a bunch of lamps, but I think that everything fit in the end. I would have liked a larger apartment, but I am pretty happy with the result. And one other thing that I really liked including in this cafe was that we have these new booths that come with this pack. So they are 3-seater booths and they actually snap to the table, which I thought was cool. And I also added some smaller tables just so that the space would be filled a bit better. And I also really liked all the decorations that I was able to add to those walls. I also really love this new wallpaper. I really like this red swatch, but I especially love the green swatch, which is the one that I ended up using upstairs. But since I really liked how the green in this pack is this deep, beautiful color, I really wanted to include it in the tiles and on that like bar back. So I also have it there, I just couldn't resist. And I think that the bathroom is also in that green wallpaper. And yeah, I am very happy with this kit. I am going to be using it in so many different places. I have built a few individual rooms that only use this kit and the base game, and I was pretty happy with the versatility that I was able to get from this pack. And I actually have that on a short and also on the galleries. And yeah, those are all rooms for houses, which I thought was cool. And of course it really works for the bistro, which is the intended use. So this outside space also looks like very cool. And I think that it looks absolutely like a place that you would find on a city, like on the city center. Especially I think it's these chairs, which are like iconic, and these tablecloths, they look just so natural. They aren't like perfectly placed, so I thought that was cool. And I really wanted to have the door centered. It was really annoying me, so I was able to size down these menus, and then they had the perfect width and everything. Of course the gold detailing is smaller now, but those pieces were a bit too wide or too thick, so I think that this way they look a bit, they don't stand out much. And of course that's one of the reasons why it was so cool that this paneling was the exact same red. And I also really loved using the fence from Realm of Magic with all of those gold metal details that are so beautiful. And I just added some finishing touches, and now we're heading upstairs. This is what the layout is going to look like. It's just going to be like a big room with the bedroom on the back and an ensuite. So I don't think that this is an ideal floor plan, but it was the best floor plan that I could figure out, and I think that it really worked. It was a bit hard because of the diagonal and also because of the window placements, because these windows from vampires are a bit interesting on the inside, and I combined some of them, which made sense for the outside, but inside it looks a bit strange. So I wasn't able to add walls just anywhere, but I think that was fine. And it was actually a bit of a struggle to figure out which curtains to use with the windows, but I think that I was also able to figure that out. And the color palette ends up having a lot of like different reds and greens, so the kitchen uses these counters from vampires, and I actually ended up having some upper cabinets from cottage living, but I added those at the very end. And I think that I mostly used vampires, crystal creations, a bit of realm of magic, and paranormal. So I did use a lot of stuff from the occult packs, but I tried to make it look like it wasn't a place for an occult to live in. So, for example, I did use a bunch of the collectibles from werewolves, but only the ones that looked less magical, so I didn't add anything like wands or anything like that. But I did add a bunch of like little sculptures and some bones. And I think that it really captured that like antique dealer personality that I was going for. I have a bunch of items that look like really mundane, so there's like this huge globe, and there's also like the radiator from vampires, which is kind of ornate and old, but it doesn't really like scream vampire, I think. And I was also happy to add stuff like the camera that is like super antique, and I also added like a typewriter and things that are, like I said, more mundane and more like an everyday item. I also added a train cart and a ship, so I thought that was cool and that it really fit the vibe that I was going for. And actually, cluttering spaces took so long. These bookshelves from Crystal Creations are very beautiful and they are very cool, so that you could have like actual functional books and also a lot of space to display things. And my favorite way to use the cube shelves from that pack is in this way, so that they aren't like floating, they look like they're resting on top of a surface. And then I of course also added a bunch of clutter downstairs, and here in the kitchen for some reason I just really wanted to use all of the, well, not all of it, but a bunch of the clutter from the country kitchen kit, so most of this clutter is from there. And I didn't like how it was sitting on top of the counter, so I decided to add two of these smaller counters. They are like end pieces, so I added two of those so that I could have all of this clutter displayed in a way that looked a bit more logical. And there's still the counter on the corner that has no clutter, so that's where your Sims would actually be able to cook. And speaking of which, I will have this up in the gallery at some point. I just have to finish furnishing the other building first, but I will definitely have it up there and you can find it under my ID, which is Verania. But back to the build, I have now added those curtains from Paranormal, which sometimes you are able to sort of tile together, and I think that I was able to do it here, and I think that this swatch worked okay. And I was also happy with how this was able to go behind the desk. And I did add curtains to all of those curtains to all of the windows in this space, although I forgot to do it. At this moment I was just distracted adding the table and adding some decorations to the space, but I did remember to do it. I just got it out because I did that much later in the build when I was working on the bedroom, so I thought that didn't make any sense for continuity. And then I thought about adding some tile to the kitchen, but I didn't like how this other green looked in there, so I decided to just have that in the bathroom, since it also looked vintage and since it worked perfectly with this flooring from the new kit. And I also added the new curtains from the kit in there. I am not yet using all of the items from the kit in here, but I will make sure to do it when I work on the other side of the slot. But I was happy that I was able to add those curtains into the bathroom, and I just added the toilet and bathtub from Vampires, but I added the sink from High School Years, and I actually added the mirror from Crystal Creations. So there's a bunch of vampires in here, but also other packs, so I don't think that this looks exactly occult or like magical, but I think that the vibe was there with all of these items that I added into that space. And now we're moving into the bedroom, which for a while looks very serious and a lot less interesting than the rest of the apartment. I really wanted to use this bed from Discover University because it looks very antique, and I actually really like it. Some of these swatches are a bit strange, but maybe I just like that it has some more pills and how the headboard looks so different. But at this moment, these colors are just looking too serious, and that wasn't what I wanted for this space. I think that the living space is a lot more interesting than the bedroom is at this point, even if I had added the artwork from the new kit and from Growing Together, which was one that I really wanted to add because of the Muka and Toulouse-Lautrec little prints that Arulo has. But even with the beautiful lamp from Crystal Creations, I just wasn't getting that look until later when I looked at the living space and I realized just how different these two spaces were. And at that point I decided to change the wallpaper. But first we're just adding some more curtains from Discovery University and these waterfall vampires, as well as this beautiful, really old, huge mirror. And also a side table with the jewelry box from Crystal Creations. And at this point I remembered about these trunks from Werewolves, which are actually a dresser, and I decided to pick one of the more colorful and distressed swatches. So I decided to have that as a TV stand, and the TV is also pretty retro. And then I remembered that I wanted to include this coffee table because it also looks really old and it has a lot of personality and it has some colorful swatches. And I also wanted a record player in here because I thought that since this sim collects so many old things, they probably also have an actual vintage record collection. And now I have added this beautiful wallpaper from Paranormal, which I think makes this have a lot more personality and it looks a bit, I think, younger. So I was very happy with that, and I am just adding these upper cabinets from Cottage Living, which I think looked more interesting in this space, probably because of the clutter and because they have more varied shapes. And I think that's going to be mostly it. I am just going to be adding some more lights into this space, and I am just scooting these bookshelves to the front of it and adding some shelves so that it looks like they actually go further back than they do, which I think really helped with this space. And that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video, and I hope to see you soon.